Have you ever wondered why sibling rivalry exists, and if divine favor plays a part in it? Let's travel back in time to the dawn of humanity, to the birth of the first siblings, Cain and Abel, children of Adam and Eve. Two brothers, each unique in their own way, each with their own calling. Cain, the elder, was a tiller of the ground, a farmer by trade, cultivating the land from which they were created. Abel, on the other hand, was a shepherd, a keeper of the flock, tending to the animals with a gentle hand. The difference in their callings was more than just a division of labor. It was a reflection of their personalities, their strengths, and their weaknesses. As the brothers grew, the stark contrast in their professions became a mirror of their characters, setting the stage for what would become the first recorded instance of sibling rivalry. As they grew, their professions became a reflection of their characters, leading to the first recorded instance of sibling rivalry. What happens when God prefers one sibling over another? This question seems to be at the heart of the story of Cain and Abel, the first brothers in human history. As the narrative unfolds, we see that both brothers, in their own way, tried to honor God with their offerings. Abel, the shepherd, brought the firstlings of his flock and the fat thereof, while Cain, the tiller of the ground, brought an offering of the fruit of the ground. But here's where things take a turn. The Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. It was accepted, signifying God's favor. The reason for this divine preference isn't explicitly stated, but it's often interpreted that Abel gave his best, his firstlings, showing his genuine piety and reverence. On the other hand, Cain's offering was rejected. The scriptures don't spell out why, but the implication is that Cain's offering didn't measure up, perhaps in quality, sincerity, or the spirit in which it was given. This rejection was a blow to Cain, a public display of divine disfavor that undoubtedly stung. This divine preference, this acceptance of Abel's offering and rejection of Cain's, was the spark that ignited a flame of resentment within Cain. He had worked the ground, toiled under the sun, and brought forth his offering, only to have it turned down. The rejection wasn't just about the offering, it was a rejection of Cain himself, of his efforts, his value. It was a deeply personal blow that stirred up feelings of inadequacy and jealousy. The seeds of bitterness were sown in Cain's heart. He had done what he thought was right. He had made an offering just as his brother had, but his was deemed unworthy. This planted the first seeds of envy, resentment, and anger that would ultimately lead to a tragic climax. Cain's offering was rejected, leading to the first seeds of bitterness and envy. This moment, this divine preference, set the stage for a story of brotherly rivalry, a tale of jealousy and resentment, and the tragic consequences of unchecked anger. How does God respond to our anger and jealousy? This question brings us to the heart of our story, where Cain's wrath boils over. God's rejection of his offering ignites a spark of resentment in him, causing his countenance to fall. This is a pivotal moment, a crossroads where Cain's reaction to disappointment and jealousy sets the course for what is to come. God, in his omnipotence, sees the storm brewing within Cain and, in his mercy, issues a warning. He confronts Cain, asking why he is angry and why his face is downcast. God, the eternal counselor, is giving Cain a chance to reflect, to understand the root of his anger, and to choose a different path. God's words to Cain are both a warning and an encouragement. He tells Cain that if he does well, he will be accepted. Here, God is encouraging Cain to examine his actions, to understand that his offering was rejected not out of spite, but because of the lack of sincerity in his heart. But God's words also carry a stark warning. He tells Cain that if he doesn't do well, then sin is lurking at his door, eager to control him. It's a vivid image of how unchecked negative emotions can lead us astray, steering us towards actions that we might later regret. This conversation between God and Cain reveals God's patience and mercy. He doesn't give up on Cain despite his anger and jealousy. Instead, he takes the time to guide him, to help him understand his feelings, and to encourage him to make better choices. This exchange is a testament to God's enduring love for humanity. Even when we stumble, even when our actions disappoint him, he remains patient, offering guidance and a chance to correct our course. However, as we'll soon discover, God's warning fell on deaf ears, setting the stage for a tragic turn of events. What lengths can jealousy and bitterness drive a person to? This is the question we grapple with as we delve into the first fratricide in recorded history. The seeds of resentment had been sown in Cain's heart, watered by the favor his brother Abel received from God. As the days passed, these feelings festered into a toxic brew of jealousy and anger. It was this potent mix of emotions, unchecked and uncontrolled, that led Cain to commit an unthinkable act. One day Cain invited Abel to join him in the field. It was a day like any other, the sun high in the sky, the wind rustling through the tall grass. But beneath the veneer of normalcy, tensions ran high. The brothers stood facing each other, their destinies poised at a precipice. At this moment, Cain's wrath boiled over. His countenance, once familiar and brotherly, was twisted by anger, and in a fit of rage, he rose against Abel and slew him. Right there, in the open field, under the watchful gaze of the heavens, the first act of fratricide was committed. This was not a spontaneous act of passion, it was the tragic culmination of an inner struggle that had been simmering for a long time. Cain's unchecked jealousy and resentment had driven him to the point of no return. In his blind rage, he had destroyed the very person he should have cherished the most, his brother. Yet even in the aftermath of this terrible act, there was no remorse, no sorrow. When God asked Cain about Abel's whereabouts, he responded with defiance, "Am I my brother's keeper?" A chilling reminder of how resentment can harden the heart and blind us to the value of love and kinship. Cain's anger culminated in a tragic act, forever changing the course of his life. This was a moment that would reverberate through the annals of history, a stark reminder of the destructive power of unchecked emotions and the devastating consequences of fratricide. What are the consequences of allowing bitterness and resentment to rule our actions? In the wake of Cain's tragic act, the repercussions were swift and severe. God, in his divine wisdom and justice, pronounced a life of ceaseless wandering upon Cain. The very earth, which once yielded its strength to Cain as he toiled and tilled, would now refuse him. The ground that silently absorbed the innocent blood of Abel now rejected the hands that spilled it. Cain's punishment was not merely physical, but deeply emotional and psychological. The earth's refusal to yield its strength to him symbolized a profound disconnect from the natural world, a world that Abel, as a shepherd, was deeply in tune with. Cain's crime had not only separated him from his brother, but also from the very essence of life and sustenance. In his despair, Cain lamented to God, expressing his fear of being slain by others for his crime. His punishment, he believed, was more than he could bear. He feared a life of wandering, of being a fugitive and a vagabond on the earth, always looking over his shoulder for the avenger of his brother's blood. Yet, even in this moment of divine retribution, God's mercy shone through. He responded to Cain's fear by setting a mark upon him, a divine sign that would protect him from being killed. This mark was not a mark of shame, but a mark of protection, a divine assurance that no one would take vengeance upon him. And so, Cain was exiled from God's presence, destined to dwell in the land of Nod, east of Eden. But even in his exile, God's mercy followed him. Cain's punishment serves as a stark reminder of the destructive power of jealousy and bitterness. It shows us that our actions have consequences not just for ourselves, but for our relationship with God, with others, and with the earth itself. Yet it also reminds us of God's infinite mercy, his readiness to protect even those who have strayed far from him. Can the sins of the father pass on to his descendants? Cain's life after his exile is marked by the birth of his son Enoch and the subsequent generations that followed. Among these descendants, a man named Lamech stands out, known not only for his polygamous marriage, but also for his violent nature. In an echo of Cain's own actions, Lamech admits to killing a man, suggesting a sinister pattern, a cycle of violence that appears to be a recurring theme in Cain's lineage. It's as if Cain's act of fratricide has cast a long shadow over his descendants, shaping their lives and actions despite their individual wills. This cycle points towards the generational consequences of Cain's actions, hinting at a tragic legacy born out of his fatal decision. In the end, Cain's legacy was one of violence and sorrow, a testament to the devastating effects of jealousy and resentment.